Hello and welcome into another episode of Reality Check here on Talkin Jets. What's going on? A little Thursday afternoon delight. Matt O'Leary and Jets chaos. Jeremy, how's it going, my friend?
It is going well. Going good here on the East Coast, not far from you, man. I could be there in 6 hours, O'Leary. 6 hours.
I'll tell you what, after the show, we hop in the car, we'll meet somewhere in the middle, and we'll have a great time, a meetup. How's that?
Probably be in like Delaware or South Jersey or something.
Yeah, there we go. Well, excited to have you on the East Coast and excited to continue to break down, as I realize I have a typo in our banner. Oh, well, not latest, but latest head coach news, rumors. We'll continue to bat it around. Last week, we talked a ton of different candidates for both the GM and the head coach. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, depending on who you ask and who you want to talk to, there are even more names on the list than a week ago. What do you think? We'll start here. What do you think about the Jets' approach for how many names? I believe it's 17 for head coach and 15 for general manager right now.
I think this has more to do with our consulting group than it does to have to do with like people. It's not the Jets freaking out saying like, we have to talk to everybody and make sure. And I don't think everybody's a real candidate. I think there's, and I talked about this on my channel before in one of my little personal YouTube direct videos. I think there's a lot to organizations, not just in the NFL, where this kind of thing goes on. I think that the consulting group itself is trying to they're trying to get to know everybody themselves, right? For their future, help other organizations hire. It doesn't hurt us because we get to learn what's out there for not just coaching positions or GM positions, but other positions, because any of these people might be available for a different position someday, right? So it just expands the Jets organization and makes connections and knowledge of different people that are out there. And it allows the consulting firm we're using to build their relationships and have their portfolio of people that they can offer other teams. So I think there's a lot of things going on. And I think that we shouldn't jump into the assumption that every single person we talk to is a potential hire, because I don't think that's really the case.
Love Stephen T's comment. First of the day, had to toss it up. Have they asked Jeremy to interview at number 88 on the application list? Do you think Jeremy would be in the top 100? I think he should be. I think 88 is more than fair.
I would say this. Definitely not as coach. I honestly, I feel like anybody could sneak and just be the GM if you wear the shoes and you wear it well, right? Because technically you have a team to do everything. You could have your financial guy where you just go to him and say, do we have the money to do that? How does that work? Do we have the salary cap? And then you go to your scouts. Who should we pick? And like anybody can kind of be that person. I have no doubt. I ran a school with 1 million of parents and all craziness. I honestly think, not that I'd be good at it, not that I'm qualified for it, but I think I could pretend and anybody can technically get away with it. Whereas head coach, it would be a mess. I'd forget to call timeout. There'd be all kinds of formation mistakes and like there'd be tons of delay of games because like for head coach, you actually have to know what you're doing and you have to be able to run things, right? You can't pretend on that.
No, there's too many moving pieces. I feel like in a game for a head coach, right? Like, as you said, the timeout, clock management, getting the right personnel on the field, the headset and everybody's talking in there. I feel like we get one of those moments where we saw all too many of those when Todd Bowles was the Jets coach and it just looked like he was staring off into space. If you or I had that headset on, we'd just be staring there like mouth agape, like what the hell's going on?
Oh, we'd be so lost because we got to realize when we're trying to make this, when we're making the decisions for them at home, we have nothing else that we're worried about, right? We're just sitting there saying, make a quick play and call a timeout. We're yelling that, but they got a million things going on. They're trying to decide what the play is going to be. Right. I mean, so they're trying to read what the defense is doing. They got a million things. The personnel, there's so much going on. It's so much harder than we think it is. That doesn't mean our expectations should be low. It doesn't mean we should make excuses for anybody because they have, the hope is you hire someone have built up to that level that they're qualified to do that job. I'm sure we all do jobs that we're experienced in that other people, if you're looking from the outside and you've never done it, look impossible.
Exactly. And let's get our first super chat of the day. Shout out Swamp Ranger. Thank you for your support. He says, Jeremy, can't wait to see you and Dom in a couple weeks at the Senior Bowl. I'll have to bet your man crushes this year as head of security. So Swamp Ranger going to be along for the ride as well with you boys.
I love it. Swamp Ridge, are you willing to drive me? Because I heard there's a Crystal Burger. There's 2 of them in Mobile, and I know that Dom C is magically always this is his time of year, I guess New Year's resolution, that he's on a diet. 2nd year in a row. He's giving me a hard time about going to these places. I need to make sure I have a driver to take me to Crystal Burger because I need some sliders.
There you go. Well, I don't know. You guys, I'm sure, doing a lot of walking around Mobile, Alabama. Do a couple laps on the sideline, Dom, and have a burger. Be a man. Come on.
I'm telling you, man. It's like I'm a White Castle fanatic that's never had Crystal. I've got to see if it's the same thing or how close it is.
We need the review for the channel also.
There will definitely be a review.
I love that. So I'm really looking forward to all the content that comes out of the Senior Bowl. Last year, having you guys down there talking to different people. Your video with Jeff Ulbrich, I think, will live forever. That is one of my favorite moments in Jets YouTube history.
Well, Jake Asman and Gator made sure that video will live infinitely forever.
I absolutely love it. My other favorite is Dom when he was talking to the prospects. He slapped the shoulder pads of everybody, and I don't know why. I just got a kick out of it. I thought it was funny. He's like, "All right, we're here with bang slap."
I did get a kick out of that too. How hard he was doing it. I was laughing, and Dom was like, because he's always so serious. He's nervous. We're trying to get interviews, and I'm goofing around. Like, to me, I'm all laid back, and I'm just looking at him laughing because he doesn't know why I thought it was so funny. And maybe he was nervous that, like, does he realize that he's like really slamming these guys on the back?
I'm glad you picked up on that too, because it just added to it. And the interviews were great. I'm not picking on Dom. It was just a funny. It was just a funny thing that was happening.
We were going to exchange, and I was going to do some of the interviews, but I honestly, I said, as much as I wanted to do it, be on camera and interviewing them, Dom C does such a great job because he just understands the language, right? Asking them about schemes and this and that. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Ask them what they like better. What do you like better? What, a burger or In-N-Out? You know what I mean? Like, I think, there's a time and place for everything. So.
Yeah. And with the scouting background, Dom's perfect for that stuff. So like I said, really looking forward to that combo. Danger Zone, our guys hanging with us. Love it. He says, hello, Matt. We know who that is. How about this? Glenn McCown, option 1A. How would you feel about a Glenn McCown duo? I'm assuming at head coach and offensive coordinator.
I would like it. Glenn is definitely on my pro list. I have a column of guys I'd be okay with or cool with. And Glenn is definitely there. For a couple of reasons. And one of the main reasons, aside from just doing a good job up to now in every challenge he's had and working his way up the ladder, you could just tell he's an accountability guy. You could tell the players are not going to walk over this guy. This guy is not afraid to tell a guy, get out of my locker room, take a walk. I don't care how good you are. You're not going to tear down the morale, or you're not going to ruin the culture of this locker room. And McCown is an up-and-coming guy, offensive mind. People have to understand, though, when you do that combination, when you get your offensive-minded guy and he's not a head coach, the problem is if he succeeds, he's gone.
Yeah, he's
going to be a head coach real soon.
That's an issue. And potentially, you look at a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last year, they lost their offensive coordinator, Canales, to being a head coach. And that might happen again this year with Liam Cohen. Obviously Todd Bowles, defensive guy, is their head coach. And he could, in back-to-back years lose, offensive coordinators because of the job that they were able to do. While we're on the topic of Glenn, I wanted to bring up his quote from yesterday that I thought really impressed me. In his press conference, the media availability of the week for, Detroit, they asked about, him being a defensive coach, or just like defensive coaches as, transitioning to head coaches in general. And something that I liked that he said was, here's the full quote. Here's the one thing I would say about myself. I'm a coach. I just happen to be on defense. I understand the offense just as well as a number of people. So if you want to hire me, you're going to hire a coach. You aren't going to hire a defensive coach. I'm going to talk to the offense just as much as I talk to the defense, which I think maybe eases some tension from what the Jets got, at least out of Robert Saleh.
Yeah, well, I think it almost could be construed. I'm not saying it is, but it's almost as if it could be a purposeful shot at Robert Saleh and what he did wrong. And that doesn't mean he intentionally did it for that reason, but we can interpret it that way because what we knew as Jet fans was that Saleh was very specifically just not engaged enough with the offense and tried to be the CEO. He tried to be something he wasn't. He wasn't a CEO that delegates. Saleh was a hands-on guy who knew how to build great defenses. And I just want to throw this in. There's hope for Saleh to develop into a good head coach someday if
Sure.
he learns from that experience that a coach is a coach. And it's a big percentage or a lot. I'm not going to break in down it exactly. I'm not going to like act like I know, but what I do know is a certain percentage of coaching is not only the knowledge of offense or defense, but coaching is about bringing out the best in players. And I hate people who say good players shouldn't need a coach to inspire them. That is such baloney because it's not only inspire. Coaching is teaching. Coaching is believing in. Like so many people that have success will tell you. Any person getting an award will thank people who've inspired them, people who have made them believe in themselves. It's such a big part of life, and you have to understand. Yeah, on the X's and O's part, maybe he's more defensive minded, and he's going to need a good offensive coordinator for X's and O's. But it doesn't mean that he's not going to have a tremendous impact on the achievement of our players on offense, because coaching is not always technical to the position or the game. It's about attitude, how to prepare mentally, how to prepare physically, caring about your diet, like just a whole bunch of things that comes under the umbrella of the head coach.
Yeah. Everything. There's a lot more involved than just taking what you learned as a defensive coordinator and then doing all those same things again as a head coach. And, you're hoping a guy like Aaron Glenn, maybe he's a little bit different. And I like the point that you brought up with Saleh too, because he's getting a lot of interviews this cycle, which I was a little bit surprised by, to be honest with you. I thought he would just be like, somebody's defensive coordinator, maybe go back to the 49ers, but he's interviewing with the Jaguars. He's interviewing with, I believe, the Raiders and the Cowboys. He's gotten a few looks so far already.
I think it's that people internally understand. Like, I think that a lot of the ways that they must be looking at it doesn't mean he's going to get a job, but I think the way people are looking at it is, here's a guy who is going to get you a top 3 NFL defense. If you give him the time and the players, and you work with him, he's going to make you a top defense in the NFL. He's going to get your team to be a top defense. And they might be looking and just say he never had a quarterback. And when he finally did, they fired him after 5 games and never gave him a chance because, he could have been 4-1 when they fired him. And the kicker missed, the kicker cost us 2 games. So maybe people are looking at it from that perspective to saying, he was about to do fine and they were going to be fine. And then they fired him. And I'm not justifying that or saying it's true. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying they easily may have that perspective. And they also might have the perspective of, if we, like Jacksonville might be thinking, yeah, but we have Trevor Lawrence. And if we have a good offensive coordinator and you bring in Saleh as the head coach and he gets us a top 5 defense, we're going to be competing for Super Bowls. And that's the way. I'm just jumping into what they might be thinking.
Right. And I think that's, a valid approach if that's where they're coming at it from.
Yeah.
Dante sends a super chat in saying, why is the Jets being very thorough in their head coach and GM search viewed as bad? I say interview as many as possible. I just want them to be quicker with it. What do you think of this?
Because Jet fans need to be negative about everything and overanalyze everything. I mean, because a lot of the people questioning the candidates saying they have this record, they have that record. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean they're serious about hiring the person. It means that they're creating a wide scope. And like I said, you never know when one of these names of the people they're talking to will pop up as a position coach someday in our organization.
Yeah, I think my not issue, but what I would say is I'm okay with obviously them casting a wide net. The number that it's at right now is 17 head coaching candidates and 15 GM candidate interviews at least. I would like them to start narrowing the list instead of expanding it. And I also think at the same time, if you're going to cast this wide net, why are they not talking to and not even that I necessarily like these guys or, all these guys for the position, but if you're going to interview Mike Locksley, let's say the Maryland head coach, why not talk to McCarthy or talk to Gruden or talk to Pete Carroll, who have, more experience and more of a proven track record at the NFL level if you are casting this wide search?
Yeah. I just, it just seems so obvious to me. The more people you talk to, the more you learn about what you're looking for. I think a lot of this has to do with the consulting firm that we're using as much as it has to do with the Jets organization. I think anybody using the service of this Group 33, I think you'll see that team organization doing the same thing. Like next year, if they're doing a search for another a team, you're going to see that team interviewing and casting a wide net.
Yeah, that's probably true. And Mike Tannenbaum does take all of his options in. He's a very thorough guy. So I'm not surprised that they were doing a wide search and that they had double-digit candidates. I believe the last time they did this, they interviewed 9 people for head coach, so they almost doubled that number this offseason and this go around. Jake Asman's hanging out with us. I was on with him earlier today. What's going on, Jake? Says, is Jeremy going to interview for the GM or head coach job? Yeah, we talked about that at the top a little bit. We both think a GM would be not easy, but easier than being a head coach.
I'll tell you why I might be able to slip in as GM, because, and this is the truth, I would honestly do this. And I'm not even joking around. Let's say for some ridiculous reason, I had a connection and I was the GM of the New York Jets. Honest to God, based on what I know and who I know, this is what I would do. Number one, $1 million a year contract, whatever I'm allowed to pay. I don't know what my budget is, but I'm paying enough salary to pull him out of his current career. Dom C is my number one. He's in charge of personnel, right? So right away, Dom C's my guy. I got Dom C. He's managing the scouts. He's with the scouts. He's running that whole program for me. He's telling me, blah, 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 whatever. My assistant GM, I have an assistant that's Green Bean, right? So Green Bean's going to sit there, and what Green Bean's going to do is he's going to make sure I'm building in the trenches. What positions do we need? He's going to talk to the Jets community. He's going to get, real information, make his sensible realizations and this and that. For the finances, I'm getting Frankie from Flatbush, right? How much do I have to pay you, Frankie? And I'm saying, hey, Frankie, what I need you to do is I want you to study every possible contract you're allowed to sign, the way you push money forward, why it's bad, why it's good. I'm totally serious about it. If I did that and got competent people, that's part of leadership. Getting competent people in the right positions is a huge part of any leadership position. And I honestly believe that I'd be putting it as much as we joke around. I honestly believe in these people. And I've seen Dom C's results. I've seen Dom C's lists, his rankings, and I see what these guys are doing in the NFL right now. Guys, he's a trained scout. He went to scouting school, and he's good. And he knows what he's doing. And the great thing is Frankie does too. But Frankie is a stats and numbers guy. So I definitely bring in people I trust, people I know. And then I'd have jobs for guys like, if you like, there's no question, O'Leary, you'd be one of the guys in the Jets media. And I would get you an official New York Jets position where you'd be putting, instead of the clowns they have right now doing all that stuff.
I will gladly take that. I know Jake wants to be, forgive me if I get the name of this title wrong, but essentially the commissioner of common sense, or the overseeing common sense, basically the Jets being like, hey, we're thinking of doing this, and run it by them. And one of his examples that he gave was like posting the video of Hassan Reddick coming out for his first practice after a long, absence when the team was 2-5, like probably not great for optics. So maybe some sort of like PR kind of role for Jake here. I think
there's no question. I mean, you know how much high level jobs there in the Jets organization for media and the management of media, this and that, whatever Jake wanted. I would take care of my own, because that's what you do. That's what everybody does. And the thing is I honestly feel that the people I know, like you and Jake and Ryan, even Tigo. I love to say even with Tigo. It's just a little thing I do. I feel like I'm surrounded by the best. I feel like I believe in everybody as real. I believe you guys. I put you guys on a pedestal. I think you guys are amazing at what you do, and I would feel completely secure in doing that and building a team with a lot of the people that we're working with, you and everyone else that we're working with, and getting to know.
I like this one from John. I would hire Joe Blewett for analytics. That's for sure. I think we'd be using Jet X Factor for some sort of analytical approach too in this.
I think cutting a deal with them would be a smart thing. Like, don't even take them out of X Factor. Let them do their thing in X Factor, but signing some kind of contract with them, you know, and doing that kind of thing where we're asking them to analyze certain players for us, but we might ask them to keep some of it a secret. Like some of it, like we don't want to help other organizations, right? So some of it we'll do after and release after we actually draft them, and then they could do the breakdown of after the draft. But I would utilize Joe Blewett for sure.
What do we do? Dana wants to know what we're doing with 𝐻'𝐿𝐫𝐞𝐞. What's 𝐻'𝐿𝐫𝐞𝐞 going to do?
Man, I don't know, but maybe just like a devil's advocate, because he's so annoying and it'll irritate you sometimes with his takes, and he'll be very argumentative, but he'll push you to think. He'll push you, and you can't, like, what 𝐻'𝐿𝐫𝐞𝐞 will do is any take you have, if you're just going because you saw somebody say it and like, oh, this assistant GM would make a great GM just because you read it somewhere, this one little thing you liked, he's going to come and throw a million facts at you and challenge you. So even if it was just for that, 𝐻'𝐿𝐫𝐞𝐞's not going to let you just buy into something and get excited about it because one other person said it. He's going to challenge you. So there's a place for 𝐻'𝐿𝐫𝐞𝐞 for sure.
Yeah. The contrarian. That's what I like to call him.
The contrarian. He'll be the team contrarian. Instead of the team consigliere, he'll be the team contrarian.
Because a peek behind the curtain here in the Talkin Jets group chat, whenever like we're batting around an idea, usually it's 𝐻'𝐿𝐫𝐞𝐞 on the other side of the fence. And it's very much so like him and Green Bean on that show on Wednesday nights. It's perfect. So I like this. I think we have a plan to get everyone, this team back on track. I like it. I'm tired of the Jets content guys.
I'd get Dano in there too somewhere. If he wanted a job, I'd find a job for him and give him an opportunity to work as well. I love Dano. So he'd be in for sure.
Well, I was going to say Dana would have to move back, but so would you guys too. Technically,
I would love to do it just if he wanted to. Like, Dano, man, if I'm making your dreams come true, I'd love to do it. Because he's that kind of guy. Like, I would just love to help make his life better, and again, whatever he would do, he would be competent because he loves it and he's passionate about the Jets.
Best one, Swamp Ranger, head of security. We're getting that guy who Green Bean. First move is getting the guy who moved Green Bean out from the Aaron Rodgers selfie. He's fired. He's done.
But I don't want Swamp Ranger with Aaron Rodgers. Swamp Ranger's with me.
Yeah, he's Jeremy.
He's with me. He's with me.
I love it. Good stuff. Dakota's in here getting us back on track a little bit, saying Aaron Glenn come home. Jeremy, I don't know about you. You tell me if you feel otherwise, but I put out a video today and it's just based on how I feel. I think it's becoming obvious the direction that the Jets are going to go, and that direction being Aaron Glenn. With the comments that Cimini had at first, essentially saying that this was his dream job. Brian Costello yesterday said that he's heard that Aaron Glenn's number one choice in this cycle would be the New York Jets. I think there's heavy interest from his side, but I also think there's heavy interest from the Jets side. And if I was predicting, I would say he is most likely to get this Jets job as head coach.
Yeah, I'd say it's 70% at this point. I'd go as high as saying it's 70%.
I don't think it's that far off. So I was looking at the odds earlier today, and he is -150, which is an implied chance of 60%. So you're not far off from where your prediction is. The next closest in the odds is Brian Flores,
which makes sense. Yeah.
Which also makes sense. I would say those are probably the top two guys, and then from there, I feel like it's preference. Some people push for someone like a Joe Brady. Some people think maybe it's going to be like Matt Nagy or someone along those lines. But I agree with the odds in that sense that Glenn is most likely. And then I would say the next percentage points would go to Brian Flores after that.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly how I would have it. And I'm not doing this to make anybody angry. Like I said, I have I have a column of guys I like. If I was to rank them, I would probably prefer Flores, one, because of the head coaching experience. but I am fine with Aaron Glenn. Like fine. It's not like because I'm not. It's not one thing only. There's a few guys that I'd be perfectly fine with. I would even be fine with McCarthy at this point. After he got fired, not fired, but after he left Dallas, I did some more research. I looked at his career more, and I thought about it, and I said, "What am I, nuts? How do you say no to that guy? Like, if you could get McCarthy, how do you not get McCarthy? The guy has enough of a proven track record that he's gonna make you a winner because that's all he's ever done. So, I mean, McCarthy, Flores, Glenn, I'm okay with any of those three, and there's even a couple of others. But the others aren't really talking to us that I know of. So to me, it's really those three, and since McCarthy we're not even talking to, it really comes down to two. It comes down to Glenn or Flores, and I'm perfectly happy with either. But a lot depends on with Glenn because of his inexperience. I think it's a lot more important to get that really good OC. Like I'm more worried about it, and that's why when I see, I like when people do the combinations. What I'm seeing. Like who his OC would be when it's like a McCown.
Yeah, that was going to be my question for you is because I agree. My top three were in order. Vrabel one, he's off the board. Then I went Flores and Glenn. But it's not that big of a gap where it's like, oh my god, if they pass up on Brian Flores for Aaron Glenn, that's unforgivable. That's not where I am.
Right.
But what names you mentioned? Josh McCown. Is there anyone else as an offensive coordinator that you think would work with Aaron Glenn?
Well, one of the things Tigo convinced me is, I mean, we're not getting him as a coordinator because it's a lot, it's a lateral position. He won't do it. But a head coaching candidate for me, we're not talking to him. But Liam Cohn, I was behind Liam Cohn as a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Tigo talked me into that, which is why I defend Tigo. Like when I joke around, I say, but seriously, at the end of the day, as much as I give him a hard time, I respect him a lot. But he wouldn't take the OC position. So I don't know of many guys I feel like I mean, I'd have to like whoever he hires, it would have to be then I learn about them. Oh, they were the quarterback coach for so and they worked under this coordinator, and it's a very good coordinator. And it's that kind of thing. But McCown is the only one I really know that it would make total sense, like to be an OC. Like that's the next logical step for him.
What about so a guy I'm going to give you? They overlapped in New Orleans when Aaron Glenn was there for a long time, and he was also with this guy was also with the Jets for only 1 year though. John Morton, the 2017 offensive coordinator.
I've heard that name, and and again, I know a lot of Jet fans aren't going to want it because when he was here, things weren't good, right? But guys, first of all, he wasn't the head coach. And second of all, that's 8 years ago, and that's a long time for somebody.
And Josh McCown was the quarterback. I thought,
right?
All things considered, with McCown, Robbie Anderson, Bilal Powell, Jermaine Kearse as your offense, I thought he did okay.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at those guys, I mean, and as much as I love those guys as people, so I'm not putting them down. I mean, what you're not exactly listing all pro players.
No,
you're listing guys who are backups in most cities, right? In most teams, they're just literally they're not starters even, or they're RB2 or like RB3 or so. Robbie Anderson's very good. He's not a true WR1, obviously. No. I mean, so. When you look at it from that perspective, it's hard you can't judge too harshly on these coaches when you look at the roster. It's so bad. And really the only thing you could judge is if they do really well, you're saying, oh my God, they're amazing, which is why I like Brian Flores. When you look at what he did with the Miami roster, it's like, holy cow. But also you can't convict people and say they can never be a good coach but based on that 1 year when they had the lack of talent that they had. So, I mean, I'm okay with it. He's the kind of guy I wouldn't be excited about, but I wouldn't be angry. I would be, let's see how he does.
I think that's totally fair. A few more super chats to get into on the backlog, so I want to pull them up. Jay Taylor's hanging with us, says, wishful thinking, but I would love to hire a couple of these GM candidates for front office roles besides GM. It needs a full makeover. I think this is actually a really good point from Jay Taylor because the it was kind of bare bones Joe Douglas's last year. Like Chad Alexander was gone and Rex Hogan was gone, and they never really replaced those guys. So a name that interests me, not only for a GM role, but maybe some other position in the league, or with the Jets rather, in the organization. But Thomas Dimitroff has the experience as a GM and has now started this whole analytical journey and this analytics company. I think he'd be a really interesting name to add to their front office in some capacity, even if it's not GM.
Yeah, and I think like I understand the concern of we need from A to Z. I mean, we basically cleaned out the building, right? Other than Phil Savage, I mean, in the scouts, the building has been cleaned. I think we have to remember, though, whoever we hire as GM, they're going to bring in a lot of these guys, right? First of all, whatever organization they're coming from, they're going to take a handful of guys and promote them all one spot, right? So, if let's say if it was Kansas City, Bragazzi, right? But he's going to come in and the guy under him is now going to be his assistant, maybe, right? And not only that, what we have to realize is how incestuous the NFL is. Like, they have tons of contacts outside in other organizations, guys that they've worked with, guys that they like, guys that they know. They're going to build up whoever we hire as GM very quickly. They're going to have there are guys they know they're bringing with them. So right away, you're going to see those voids start to fill.
Yeah, and they really need that. And I think a lot of people felt this way, but something that I was saying during the end of the season was that they really need to have some sort of fumigation in that front office, meaning they needed to clean house and get a whole new staff in here. And what that means is general manager adds different guys in his scouting department and in the college level and all that. And it's just something that I think we need to see overturned, because it got a little stale here for the last few years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, there's a lot of stink that has to get out of that building. I mean, and you have to even look in, I mean, unless they know the leaks, we don't know what they know. They might know exactly who the leaks were. Like Woody Johnson might know. I mean, he might be the leak. His son might be the leak, whatever it was. But if they don't know, and if they're, because I hear a lot of things, even from people I know in our world, that there were people in that building, custodian type people, that were saying stuff to people. And they need to get on that. And if there's truth to that, they need to clean it all out. Like, if there are people who violated the confidentiality that I'm sure they agree not to violate, they need to go. Like, it's not like a slap on the wrist kind of thing. If you start talking about things that are going on behind closed doors that you're not supposed to talk about, you're gone.
Yeah, it's not good.
Okay. It's not okay. Like, this stuff cannot go public. Like, there are things that need to stay behind closed doors. And as much as we want to know about it and we're curious and we're the first ones to run and open up the articles, the truth is, it's better that we don't know some things. Like, there are certain things we don't want out there because it's a distraction to the team.
It definitely is a distraction. And I think it's something that they need to clean up. Rodgers has said it for how long? He goes on McAfee, we got to get the leaks out of the building. We got to get the leaks out. And it was a problem, a really big problem. So hopefully that goes away. Dante's back with another super chat, says, would I be a bad fan if I don't want Glenn? He's my second favorite Jet growing up, Martin number 2. And I just want this. And I don't want, I'm going to assume he means this team to ruin him. I also want experience. No, I don't think that makes you a bad fan. I think it's a legitimate concern if you're saying that you want someone with experience.
I've said it on this show. As much as I think that I like Glenn a lot, and I think there's a chance he might end up being a very good coach, the difference between him and Flores, the biggest difference is Glenn's floor is much lower. I mean, with Aaron Glenn, it might be a disaster. It's possible because he's a rookie coach. Any rookie coach, even Ben Johnson, that everybody's going so nuts for, rookie coaches have very low floors. Because there's so many guys that were assistants that people were so excited about, and they've been disasters. But Brian Flores, I feel, does not have a low floor because he has 3 years of a team getting better every year. Like, he's clearly now Aaron Glenn you could argue might have the higher ceiling than Brian Flores. Aaron Glenn might be the guy with the higher ceiling that might be the guy that wins us a Super Bowl, whereas Flores wouldn't. But going in and knowing nothing about the future, Flores has the higher floor, though, because we've seen him do the job, and we've seen him not be a 4-12 team. We've seen him go up and build a 10-6 team. So that doesn't mean that you have to be Flores over Glenn. But I think if you're being honest, you have to say that Brian Flores has the lower floor, or the higher floor, and less risk. Aaron Glenn might take us to the Super Bowl. He also might be a complete disaster.
Because we've never seen it. And there's no way to know until you do see it, which is the really tough part of this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like this comment for Steve. Sorry. Let's get the GM first, which I think that's the most important. I do think that's what we do see first. I don't know about you. The Senior Bowl is coming up relatively soon, isn't it? I would like someone February 1st, which is 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away.
I mean, I get home on Saturday this week in a couple of days, and I'm flying off on the following Sunday night. Like, I'm on the red eye. So January 27th, that Monday, is the first day of practice where we'll be there watching them practice.
Is it unrealistic to want the Jets to hire someone before that? Like, do you think there's enough time within the next week or so, let's say, for the Jets to hire someone and start the building of a staff so that they could have some sort of presence there?
Well, Detroit might be still alive at that point, right? If Detroit goes to the Super Bowl, we might not have a decision for a long time. But I think what people have to understand is, because you're saying first GM, we're interviewing GMs and we're interviewing coaches. Don't think that they're not talking to every GM candidate saying, what coaches would you be comfortable working with? And they're not asking every coach, which GM would you be comfortable working with? So they already know. They're already cross-matching. They already know, if we hire Aaron Glenn, this is the GM, or these are the two GMs he's very comfortable with and said in the interview he'd love to work with. And this is a GM he wouldn't want to work with. So I'm sure they're doing that. I mean, because if I could think of that, how are they not? I'm not smarter than they are. Like, they're definitely talking to the candidates about who they would want to work with and how they would work with them, for sure.
I was going to say, it's almost too obvious, right? Like that's the route that you have to go. And that's why they're doing it at the same time.
So if you can, obviously if you can't announce one before the other because of the way the playoffs work out, it doesn't mean that they didn't come to a behind closed doors decision. Right. So just if we announce Aaron Glenn and then the GM is announced 2 weeks later, because for any reason, the contract being worked out, whatever it was, it doesn't mean that GM wasn't part of that decision already, because we know that GM already said, yeah, Aaron Glenn would be my guy or one of my two guys. Because what's really important is that when everything settles down, the GM is the boss, that the hierarchy is the GM. That the GM is in charge of personnel and that the coach reports up to the GM. That at the end of the day, we need to maintain that. We need to have the correct hierarchy.
1,000%. 1,000%. Dano back with another good comment says, for me, the fact that Aaron Glenn is willing to make us a priority when we're as tragic as we are is astounding. And I give him a lot of credit for that. It is nice to know that there's someone who feels like they desperately want this job. That's also not Rex Ryan. Like, with all due respect to Rex, like, he's been out of the game for 10 years. This is a, legitimate head coaching candidate, a coach who's been on the rise, went from an assistant to a positional coach to a defensive coordinator, and is now clearly ready to eventually take this step to being a head coach. And he's like, I want that Jets job. There is something to that.
Interviewing with multiple teams, has interest from multiple teams. The fact that other teams are interested in him, the fact that he's going to be a head coach somewhere, but he's saying, I want to be a Jets coach. So this is not an assistant that will say yes to any offer. I just want to be a coach, right? I want to be a coach. We truly know that he wants to be in this organization. He wants to be the New York Jets head coach. That means that whether it's because he loves the fans, loves the city, loves the organization, likes the roster, combination of those things, whatever it is, having somebody that has options, that wants to be here, yeah, you give him points for that. without question, because there are a lot of people, I mean, certainly candidates we're talking to, that would take any head coaching job, right? So it has nothing to do with liking our organization or liking our situation. And you always have to wonder, if they would have had another option, would they have come? And that's not something you want to have to wonder.
Yeah, you don't want to be, you're picking coach number 11 on this list because nobody else wanted to come here. If Glenn is a legit candidate and wants to be here, that's part of the battle too. And I might have brought it up on one of the shows or streams that we've done here. But on the last game of the year, I thought Bart Scott, who at times could be a little bit of a loudmouth and brash, but I thought this was a really, really good quote saying what the Jets need. And he was saying, we need volunteers, not hostages. So essentially saying, like, people who want to be here and not people who are being essentially held against their will to come here.
Right. You don't want guys saying, well, I'll try, and the worst case that happen is I'll go back down to being an assistant, and they'll give me the opportunity. Maybe I'll just roll the dice, and I'll try to do it there, even though it's the Jets. Like, that's the last thing we want in the world. The last thing we want. Well, we definitely want that guy that has an emotional attachment to the organization. And that's step one. That's an important thing. Doesn't mean he's going to do a good job, right? But we know that he has a lot of the pieces already. We know that he's not an embarrassment. We've seen him at work. You've seen him. I mean, even Hard Knocks, it's a little piece, but you got to see the relationship he had with the players and the way he approached his job and the intensity. You see him on the sidelines. You saw the game, Minnesota, they were before the Rams did it. We saw how he shut them down in that big game, like with a battered, injured defense. He kept them alive, kept them going, and he did such the biggest game of the season. He's the coach who stepped up, right? Because the Detroit defense completely shut down Minnesota's offense.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see if he builds even more steam if, let's say, Detroit comes out and they are just dominant again defensively against a really good young quarterback in Jayden Daniels this week. I think that only adds to, the fuel to the fire on him.
Right. Can he take advantage of a rookie quarterback? Can he confuse a rookie quarterback? A very talented one. But, if they don't have a great game, it doesn't eliminate him as a candidate, and you can't read too deep into it. You can't read too deep into, I think it's a plus that he did a great job against Minnesota. It's a plus if he does a great job against Washington. It's not everything. It doesn't mean that means he'll be a great coach. And if they perform badly, the defense, it doesn't mean he'll be a bad coach, because you can't dissect one game. You have to look at the whole picture.
Peter S. is kind of piggybacking off that. He says, since Glenn was a Jet and reports are indicating he wants this job, meaning he will do all he can to turn things around. That's kind of what we were saying here, right? Yeah. Like he gets it. He was here when they were really bad. He was there for the Rich Kotite years. And then he was under Bill Parcells when he saw the turnaround firsthand. And he probably hopes that that's exactly what he can do with this team.
If he has 15 years left in his career, this is a guy, if he took over and did the good job, where we'd want to keep him till the end of his career, like Pete Carroll in Seattle, right? Mm-hmm. This is a guy who's not going to make a lateral move. This is a guy who's not going to say, oh, but now I want to cheat. Pittsburgh, big time. I'm sorry, Jets. No, if he turns things around and we're winning, he loves New York. He loves the Jets organization. And I want a guy who, if they're the right guy, is a guy that'll be here for a decade and a half. Really, we've been longing for that. And that would be a great, great thing about Aaron Glenn, and probably more confident about that than I am Brian Flores. Brian Flores might be a guy, does a 5-year contract, turns things around, gets a little bored, and then he goes on to some other team to turn them around. I don't want that. I want, so to me, that's an advantage with Aaron Glenn, is I believe more that he'll be the guy willing to spend the rest of his career with us if we want him.
I think so. I definitely do. And Big Green puts in a comment here that I really like, saying, don't forget, if he wins here, he will be a legend. He already is beloved by Jets fans, right? For his time from 94 to 2001, really good Jet, was a 2-time Pro Bowler with the Jets, and then went back to the Jets to start his scouting career, and is now potentially going to be starting his head coaching career with the Jets. I agree with Big Green's comment. If it works, let's go to the positive side.
Oh,
He's
100%.
legend.
I mean, a former player comes back home after we have the longest playoff drought in the NFL 15 years later, and he like, and it doesn't have to do with year one, obviously, but by like 26, brings us to the playoffs. We win a playoff game, and then the next year, let's say we actually, I mean, even without winning a Super Bowl, he's already like beloved for that, right? For bringing us back to relevancy. If he wins a Super Bowl, it's like he's our Vince Lombardi, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
like he's our guy. Like we will love him forever. He'll be a New York, he'll be an icon for forever within the NFL New York. I mean, and our fan base. So yeah, he has an opportunity. It's a great opportunity. And I think it's a little bit more than just somebody like, even if it was a Brian Flores. Yeah, he'd be loved if he came here and won us the Super Bowl. But it's not the same. With Aaron Glenn, it would be a little bit higher, a little bit more, because he's a Jet.
exactly. City Burt has a question, says, if Commanders drop a 40 piece on the Lions, would Woody still want him? Woody is prone to recency bias. While I don't think you should let one game be the decider, it is important to note that Woody has shown that he is very reactionary.
Well, we would have to all call up Mike Nanya and Joe Blewett and beg them, please go on and do a show right now, screaming and yelling that you can't give up on Aaron Glenn, or you can't blame him, and you should not hire him because of one game. So if Brick Johnson's watching, maybe he'll run to his dad and say, no, 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 we could still hire Aaron Glenn. So, because we know how the chain works, right? It starts with X Factor, and then it goes to Brick, and then it goes up to Woody.
Jake says Mangini was in The Sopranos for like 10-6 as Mangenius. That just goes to show you like how desperate we are for things to be good, right? Like the Jets had one really good season with Eric Mangini, and he was put in one of the best shows of all time.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, he was a smart coach, though. There was a reason for that nickname. He was really smart with his schemes and everything like that. The thing that killed him from ever having a chance was, I mean, think about this poor guy. Jets, and then Cleveland. Like there is no way to put a nail in your coffin than to go to Cleveland, because if you go to Cleveland as your first head coach opportunity, there's a second chance. But if you go as a failure and fail there, then unless your name is Norv Turner, very few coaches are ever going to get a third, fourth chance or anything like that. He's the only coach I've ever known of, Norv Turner, that gets to go to multiple organizations and fail.
Yep, he only lasted 2 years in Cleveland, two 5-11 seasons, and then unfortunately he was done, and never coached in the NFL again. But 2 out of the 3 years he was with the Jets, made the playoffs once, and had 2 winning seasons.
Yeah, it wasn't horrible then.
No, he wasn't. But Woody, maybe a little reactionary, pulled the plug after they were 8-5, and then missed the playoffs at 9-7.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand also. I mean, I think I could speak for 90% of the fan base that we were so. I mean, we were so juiced when we hired Rex Ryan. I remember one of the guys I work with at work. I was in a school in Brooklyn. The dean, he's a big Jets fan, and he said to me, he said exactly what was going to happen. He said Rex is going to come in and just set it on fire for us, man. We're gonna go deep, and we're gonna contend. And it's funny because he also told me at the same time, but in a few years he's gonna fizzle, and it was exactly what happened.
Wow.
He even said he's gonna fizzle out in a couple of years. Like he's one of those guys that's gonna come in all emotional and make it all great, but then he's gonna run. It's gonna get old, and it's gonna just fizzle. And he was right. And I always tell, every time I see him, I said, "You nailed that next Rex Ryan thing, man."
It was a great first 2.5 years, and then the second half of 2011 and beyond was not it.
It almost, and I don't want to like out myself as the jinx to this organization, but for my 40th birthday in 2011, my wife surprised me and got tickets to the Miami Jets game, the home game that year. Okay. And that was the turnaround. That was when like we went in still in it, still a contender, hoping for another, like still kind of in it. And it was a rainy day, just like the Denver game. And it was the crappiest game, no scoring. The Jets were awful. They lost the game. And then the team went like this. And the same thing happened to me this last season with the Denver game. It's just unbelievable. And the same thing happened last year with the Chargers game. It's like, you can't make I got to stop going to games.
Yeah, I think that's the move. I think we got to ban ourselves from that stadium until they start winning some football games here. Oh, man. Um, let's see what else we got in here. JV Free is very against this. What else is new? Saying right because any other coach winning a Super Bowl here would just be another guy. That's not what we were saying. We're saying that it's an added extra bonus, the cherry on top that he was also a former.
Jay Free might be the dumbest human being we've ever had to deal with. Like all he does is say things that we're not saying. I didn't say he'd be just another guy. I said it would be a little bit of a difference. I said it would be a little bit more epic if it was a former Jet. And does anyone argue that? When it's a guy that you already love as a player, that's going to be a little bit more than it. But I'm not saying that Brian Flores wouldn't be super beloved if he won us a Super Bowl. Of course he would.
Or any other of the coaches.
Any coach we brought in would be loved if they turned us around and we won a Super Bowl. But it would be a little extra special if it was a former Jet. If you don't agree with that, fine. But stop putting words in our mouth, you stupid person. I will never ban him, though, because it's like it gives us great content.
It does.
I mean, 𝐀𝐮𝐫𝐚 taught me that. He has a couple of guys that say horrendously stupid things. I'm like, I'm surprised you haven't blocked them. He goes, no, it's great for the show.
Good content.
It's good content.
Scott wants to know if you're wearing a Grateful Dead shirt.
Yes, I am.
Deadhead?
Yes, I am. I mean, I'm not a deadhead where like my fraternity brother who carried a box of cassettes around, and he was like a total burnout. And basically that was his box of following them around the country in the early 90s. I wasn't that, or I'm not that, but I love the Grateful Dead, man.
That's good. They're a lot of fun. They came a couple years ago. We're at Citi Field, and I didn't go to the concert, but I had a lot of friends who went, and I was jealous that I wasn't there because the parking lot looked like a lot of fun beforehand.
Yeah. They're always a jam band's always a fun band if you're into it. Like, it's so funny. There's such a hit and miss. If you're not into jam bands, it's unwatchable for people. Because they'll just sit there for 25 minutes with nothing but music playing, like with no words, nobody's singing, even nobody's saying anything. It's just 25 minutes of jam, and then it'll finally stop, and they might say something, like, and then go into another song.
Yeah, that's not usually my thing, so that's probably one of the reasons why I haven't seen them. But I do appreciate music, and I appreciate what they've done too.
And they're like one of the very few jam bands that I actually like. Like most people like Grateful Dead, like Fish, and I was never into Fish.
Okay.
I was into a much smaller band called String Cheese Incident. That was a little bit of a jam band, but they were great. They were amazing, and they were small venues, so which is a million times better when you're in a tiny little venue.
This is a great point from Jake, is saying, as Jets fans, we all know the parking lot situation is usually the highlight.
That's what it's been. The best Jets moments of the last few years for me were the Jet games where we've gotten to hang out, all of us.
Yeah, that's been the highlight. And then we go into the building and they lose a stinker, and then we come walking out of there, usually in the rain. Like, what the fuck did we just watch? Miserable.
2 out of the last 3 years in the rain too. It's horrible.
How about this one? This could be fun. Brees Lightning wants to know favorite thing about working with Green Bean and Ryan. They are easy to get along with. Green Bean just makes me laugh constantly, and Ryan is one of the most technically savvy people that I know. I think he puts on a great broadcast. So I'm happy to work with all those guys. How about you?
Same for me with Green Bean. Just an amazing friend. Like always there. If I ever had a problem in my life, could always call him. Always there for advice, that kind of thing. Always there to like give me a hard time, but like remind me that he loves me. Like he's just an awesome human being, awesome family guy. He wears himself on his sleeve. So Green Bean is what you see of him. And then Ryan, just a technical genius, just blown away by his brilliance and like the production and the way he's able to do things and everything. Just so impressed with him and flattered that he let me be part of this channel. Let's be honest.
Yeah, watching him set up for our live broadcast of the draft, which you and Snowball got to see, part of that, us setting up, he was like on another level. Green Bean and I were like, all right, just tell us what to do and we'll figure it out.
Yeah. He's a genius. He really is.
So we got a few more in here. Tony, the GM, said he's tired of the GM, coach, and quarterback revolving door. Hopefully that's not something that the Jets have to continue. It'd be nice if they hit on all three of those things, wouldn't it?
Well, you need a coach. The GM needs to hit on coach and quarterback. That, I mean, if you look at any successful GM, that's what they've been able to do, right? Like, it's like if you hit on coaching quarterback, the rest, everybody is pulling from the same pool of scouts. Almost always things will work out if you get that quarterback and that great coach. It's not a coincidence that things will work out. So yeah, I mean, we haven't had a GM that's been able to come in and hit on both coach and quarterback.
That would be the start. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the off season for that. I don't see them taking a quarterback in the draft this year. And I don't know if a veteran's going to come in here and right the ship. I think you're looking at a stopgap for another year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that no matter who we hire, I hope that the Jets fandom and the Jets fan base, not low expectations, JV, but reasonable and fair expectations. And I think reasonable and fair is not winning only 4 and 5 games. I think we have the right to expect. I think like 8 and 9. It's not what I want. I want to sneak into the wild card. I want to win 9, 10 games. I want the best. But if Aaron Glenn was to come in here and we have a bridge quarterback and we turn things around a little bit, if we're 8 and 9 but competitive in every game and it looks different and it doesn't look the same, I don't want everybody to jump and say, "Oh, the worst coach, we messed up again." It's like, no. Give him the year. Like, yes, we want to try. And I think there's enough talent that it's possible. We might be able to make the right moves. We might be able to really get that wild card spot and break this drought. I am hopeful for that. But at the same time, this is not a 1 year and done kind of thing, right? Like, we have to at least let them settle in here for a year and just look for some growth, look for some improvement, look for change in the culture, all those things, and then hope for the best.
Yeah. That's perfect way to say it. I think that's a perfect way to end the show today as we've reached 4 o'clock. I'm hoping by this time next week, we have a little bit more clarity, Jeremy.
It would be nice. Look, it would be nice. We knew this was going to be painful. We knew because Detroit's in the playoffs, and and if Glenn's the guy, we knew that we're talking to candidates like Kansas City assistant GM. Like, I kind of was bracing for it. I said, this is going to be really long because it's going to take, and it could possibly take until the week after the Super Bowl until we know. I'm not saying it will, but it's not impossible that's what's going to happen. So, brace yourselves. I mean, hopefully it doesn't have to be that way, but it's very possible that we're not going to have the official announcement until after the Super Bowl.
Well, I'm excited to do it again with you next week. That's going to do it for us for now. I'm Matt. He's Jeremy. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you next time.